exciting to be here this morning and to be back home. And I don't take this opportunity lightly, and just so excited to have my father sharing because like many of you who have older parents and the neighbors catch them out on the front lawn. What about that younger son? What is he doing? I don't know. I think he's working in government somewhere. So now I wanted to dispel that from his vocabulary and so give him a good indoctrination into what I do. I love small business. I am so blessed and fortunate to have come as far as I have in my career, and I'm winding that down. But you may ask, who is Dr. Josey? Who is Anthony Josey? I hail from the red bricks of Taylor Homes on the north side. I survived the cinders of the fires of Chestnut Street School. I made it to college when I had a high school guidance counselor that told me that you may want to consider coming down to Cape Fear because you don't have what it takes to make it in college. But I persevered, and I'm so grateful to be here, to be able to share with you. And this is exciting. So many entrepreneurs in the house. That's really exciting. I want you to know that I was so fortunate because I grew up in a house where my father in Taylor Homes was the neighborhood barber right there in the kitchen. And so entrepreneurship started in my home. My mother was a seamstress par excellence. She sewed shirts at Block Shirt Factory, but anyone familiar with Warner Temple AME Zion Church knew that every one of the choir robes that the kids wore, my mother made those at the living room table. And so I had great examples, and many of you, I'm not saying you're privileged, but you're fortunate. You know, during the summers, you could have the summer off. I had 4 older brothers that my father said, if you want some school clothes for next year, you get that lawnmower out. So I was a little brother in tow behind all of them. I had to pick up the rocks while they pushed the lawnmower. But isn't God good today? Look at how far he's brought me. I remember when the previous administration were negotiating with the Taliban in Afghanistan. They had to put a contract in place for this communication and dialogue to happen. It was my signature and warrant authority on that contract that allowed those discussions to happen. We just reopened or are opening the embassy in Ukraine, and it was my signature on that allowed that to happen. Hailing from Wilmington, North Carolina. Who would have thought it? Let me tell you how important you are. This country has never come out of a recession on the backs of large businesses. This country has never stabilized itself after a recession on the backs of large businesses. It was small businesses, like each and every one of you in this room, who sat around and came up with an idea. I think I'm good at this. I think I can do something tangible. And you took that idea, at least I hope you're taking that idea, and you're investing in yourself. And you're positioning yourself so that you can be a benefit to your community and those around you. And so I'm excited to be here. And Gerard, let's let the games begin.
All right, thank you, Dr. Josey. So just to give you guys a little bit of framework for the conversation, What we're discussing here is how to build an enterprise. So you're a sole proprietor or you're someone that's operating now without any employees. What we want to do is talk about how can you scale that business so that you can build generational wealth, or as we like to call it, plant shade trees. So I'm going to ask some questions. We're going to get Dr. Josey's insights, and hopefully we have a few minutes to get a little bit of Q&A with the audience. So Dr. Josey, the first question is for minority business owners. When building an enterprise, what would you say are the first steps toward launching a successful venture?
Well, the first thing is you got to know your craft, because particularly, and I'm going to speak quite a bit from my context, which is the federal government. You have to know your context. You have to know who you are and what you do. You have to know it so intricately that someone could ask you a behavioral-based question about an opportunity or about your sphere, that you need to be able to respond to it standing on your head, you're laying down, reaching backwards. You need to know what you do in and out. Know your industry. Know your industry. Case in point, if you have a lawn service business and you go and you put on a suit and you go knock on the doors of this business and you say, hey, we believe we can provide a superior service, and they're sold on you. And the next thing they know, you show up with a push lawnmower. Well, everybody else has got a 360 radius spinning John Deere. How long do you think they're going to be impressed with you? Know how to market. That's so important. That's so important. I was just sitting there just a second ago talking to Michelle with Elaborate Outings, and she was telling me about a business, and we were casually talking, and she didn't know that I was trolling her. I'd already gone on her website, pulled it up, and I was showing her a picture about her site. If I'm in the business of procuring whatever service you're offering, I need to know that you're going to give me good value for the money that I'm going to spend with you. That's so important. And the government is the same way. The one thing about the government is that we're all about mitigating risk. Is a contract with you going to put me at risk? Okay? Get your credentials. That's so important. Get your credentials. But it's not enough to get your credentials. The goal is that getting your credentials will spark interest in you to run a little further and do things to get the rest of the things done, so that you position yourself to be competitive on a requirement. Very important. You want to register in portals where you can research opportunities. That's so important. The government spends a lot of money. The city spends a lot of money. And a lot of times people will call us and say, well, how can we get on your preferred vendor list? And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm a little old school. And I take that as if you're trying to take a shortcut and be easy. I've always been told anything that comes easy isn't worth having. But if I've got to go and look at the city's physical forecast, what their projected budget is for the next year, and I can see the types of things that they're going to procure, and if it's in my wheelhouse, I'm going to start asking questions. And I'm going to start partnering with people that could help me reach that opportunity, because my heels may not be big enough, but on your shoulders, I'm going to have it in hand. And that's so very important. The other thing is prepare yourself. Prepare yourself. Be it bonding, insurance, just having a compliant auditing system, prepare yourself. Again, the business that fails to plan, plans to fail. That would be my best response for that.
All right, Dr. Your second question. We know throughout your career, as you talk out Jumpstart Academy, you guided many companies toward achieving success in that world of contracting. What are some of, especially for our entrepreneurs right now, we talk a lot about detail. What are some of the characteristics and the traits of successful business owners that you've seen in entrepreneurship?
The first thing I want to let you know is successful business owners know that entrepreneurship is not for the faint at heart. Okay, because and I brought one of my companies down. It's $61 million a year company that was birthed in the kitchen, on the kitchen table. And he said, Dr. Josey, what are you going to do when you retire? I know you're going to start that 8A company. I said, nah, man, I'd rather just consult and help some companies. And he said, yeah. He said, that's right. You're a little bit too old to be mortgaging your house behind a business. Are you willing to do that? Are you willing to make that decision, whether it's my child in college or pushing this business that everyone I know keeps telling me is a pipe dream? But I believe in myself. And that's another thing. Be careful who you bounce your ideas off. Every place isn't a safe sanctuary for your sacred ideas. That's so important. Many ideas were killed before they even got a chance to start. As a small business owner, let me just share with you some of the tasks that you have. You've got to market the business. You got to perform. You've got to mitigate risk, even in your sleep. You've got to manage a company. And let me tell you something. These workers aren't the workers from my day. My first job was Tuesday's Restaurant on Oleander Drive at 15 years old. It's in my blood. And my kids, they started working at 15 years old. True story, my oldest son is 34 years old. He's had one job in his life. The job that he interviewed for when he was 15 years old with Chick-fil-A. And he became a team lead, and I tried my best to get him just to go to school, but he wouldn't let that girl Chick-fil-A alone to save his life. And I'll be honest with you, I'm glad he didn't listen to his daddy, because today he's in Chick-fil-A's corporate leadership program. He has his master's degree, and he goes all over the country opening stores. He just got back from a store in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and he and his new wife are going to Huntington, West Virginia to take over that store until the next new owner comes in. But there's a different work ethic today. People may show up and they may not. And you've got to be prepared for that. Because let me tell you something. You contract with the government in their contract, it does not say an employee named so-and-so. You're obligated to us to have 8 FTEs, full-time employees, in that position every day from 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock. And we hold you accountable, and we're going to ding your CPARS rating if you don't have them there. It's all about accountability. You're carrying all of this on your shoulders. Are you sure you want to be an entrepreneur? Do you believe in that dream that God imparted in your heart that much? You've got to be a program manager on each project. And every project has a different contracting officer representative. And so you've got to deal with a different personality. But I got my skills, honestly. When I was at North Carolina Central University, I got me a job at a flower shop. I left Duke Cancer Center with some balloons, and I went to a funeral home to deliver a spray. And then I had to go over to the ward which housed children with cancer. And I had to cheer them up. And so my personality had to be like this. Can you adapt to all those cultures as a business owner? And you still got to do business development. Because if you don't bring the business in, guess what? The dream dies. And many of you are like me, not on my watch. And so a lot is being asked of you. Entrepreneurship is a big word, but the weight of it is so much more.
Absolutely. Next question is, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the challenges. We know that you have an extensive history in procurement. What are some of the challenges facing procurement and contracting opportunities for minority business owners? And what solutions do you think should be implemented to support it?
I'm looking through my phone because I want to tell you that the federal government was really turned upside down at the end of the fiscal year this year. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the 8A Business Development Program. 8A? 8A is a socially economic disadvantage program that the Small Business Administration administers. And there are certain qualifications that you have to meet, but you are entitled to receive sole source contracts up to $4.5 million without competition. Okay? And it's one of those programs that if you can prove that you have been disadvantaged socio-economically, then that's part of the requirement for getting into the program. But let me just share something with you. On July 19, 2023, a district judge enjoined the Small Business Administration from using the rebuttal presumption of social disadvantage in administering the 8A Business Development Program. Ultima Services versus Department of Agriculture. The rebuttal presumption, which is, what you have to demonstrate getting into the 8A program, it assumes, unless there is evidence to the contrary, that members of certain racial and ethnic groups qualify as socially disadvantaged within the meaning of the 8A Business Development Program requirements. The court held that the SBA's use of the rebuttal presumption violated the plaintiff's Fifth Amendment right to the equal protection of the law. So what happened, there was a person that was upset that they didn't get this contract that was set aside for the 8A Business Development Program. It came before a judge who was an appointee of the previous administration, and that individual ruled against it. And so the federal government could not award any 8A contracts until every small business owner in the 8A program went back through the process and rewrote it to demonstrate that they did not qualify by the rebuttal presumption rule. Total spend annually in the last 30 to 45 days. So you have all of these companies scrambling to get qualified, and they told us, Department of Justice through the Small Business Administration told us, unless a company has demonstrated that they meet the new requirement and that they didn't fall under that, don't spend one nickel with them. And so it threw the entire federal government in a tailspin. And so we were on calls nationally with all of these administrators from every federal agency across the government. Now, thankfully, the Washington, D.C. office, which has the highest volume in the country, they were at 100% in terms of getting their companies recertified to meet the current criteria. But imagine, you're a small business owner. You've been courting, doing business development, in and out of those doors with that one program manager and contracting officer, and they all but committed and promised that $4 million contract to you. And you're right there, and you've already contacted your business opportunity specialist with the SBA and say, hey, this is coming. And next thing you know, unless you go back and do all of this, you've already hired people on the anticipation that that contract is going to be awarded to you. And just like that, someone steps in and turns the whole world upside down. And so there are going to be more challenges like that coming. I already see that this is the peak of an iceberg, because there is a element of entitlement that's out there. And I've seen it rear its ugly head. We had one company. They were on a blanket purchase agreement with our agency for 5 years. $27 million they got off that contract. And when his contract was over, now mind you, he didn't do anything but just get the money. He didn't network. Now, if it were me, what I would have been doing was, while I was in that contract, I would have found some other partners out there that are on some contracts. I would have given them 1 or 2 or 3 FTEs so that they could put me over there with them. So when my contract ends, I still got life over there, or I would be networking. But he didn't do anything but get paid. And afterwards, when he saw that the work was going a different direction, he went on a letter writing campaign saying that you're taking our workers. And he went all the way up. He went to SBA. He went to the head of our organization. And he spoke as if he was entitled to this work, that he was entitled to those employees. And so it's out there, and it's not going to go away. So there are going to be many, many more threats to you all in small businesses, small minority businesses, and things of that nature. But fortunately, a lot of businesses, companies, and a lot of governments recognize that this is the right thing to do. And I noticed we have a representative from the city of Wilmington here. I love coming home. I come here every year for conferences. There's something special about flying home when the government's dying. But I remember back in the early 1990s, our CEO Wickett was head of planning. And I did a short stint over there, and they had this group meeting called the 2020 Vision. And they talked about what they envisioned Wilmington looking like and its waterfront looking like. And they finally found the right talent to make that happen. And Sterling Cheatham, we were both prodigies of Dr. Tyrone Banks in the Public Administration Department at North Carolina Central University. And but when I drive into Wilmington and I look and I see this beautiful skyline, my default characteristics kick in, and I said, I wonder how many subcontracting opportunities were given to small, minority, and disadvantaged businesses. Because we have to hold them accountable. When you have these large infrastructure projects, these large contracts, and a lot of companies that are in your context don't have the size, capacity, or the ability to make those things happen, then we have to impose subcontracting plans that require them to leave some of that money in the community that they're performing in. And that's so important, so very important. We have Alaska Native corporations and tribal entities that are able to get hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts sole sourced by just writing a justification and approval. Okay? And to me, because I run the 8A Business Development Program for the State Department, if you're coming, because we have lots of work in these large 8A contracts, and if you're coming to me and you're asking me to help you get this opportunity, my next question is, how many of my small businesses are you going to take along with you? Because that's $200 million, and you have to understand, before it was a $200 million contract, it was a lot of $4 million contracts that got morphed into a big contract that's no longer in the reach of these small businesses. And so now I want to know how you're going to do that. Now, our agency, and I have to give my co-worker, Janique Hudson, who is a contracting officer par excellence. We have what is called a small business participation plan, and we can insert that document in any contract. And what that does is that forces a prime in their proposal. When they submit a proposal response to an RFP, they have got to demonstrate who they're going to partner with on that contract, how they're going to include small businesses on that particular contract. And it's very detailed. You have to show us that there's a partnership letter between the two of you. You have to show us the percentage work share that you're going to give them. Okay? And here's the key thing. It's a part of the evaluation factor in formal source selection. What does that mean? That means that I'm going to look at what you said on your contract, on your proposal, and I'm going to rate you. And I'm going to look at what the other guy says, and I'm going to rate you. And so if he's saying he's going to give a bigger share, more dollars, and bring more small businesses to the table, he's going to get more points on his proposal to qualify for that contract versus the other guy. So now what that does is it incentivizes them to use small businesses. And it's nothing new. We use it at the federal level, but it can be used at the state level. It can be used at the local level, because we have so many college students that are going off to college. And the idea of coming back home and having a job is disappearing. We've got to bring our talent back home. There weren't many options for me when I graduated. And I have buddies that I went to college with that are from DC and places like that. And one day he was bragging about his growth, and I looked at him and I said, you're so fortunate to have a home that grants you opportunities that you don't have to go nowhere else to look for a job but back at home. My career, I picked up my wife and 2 boys. I got a fully funded fellowship. And I was at the Army Corps of Engineers out on Market Street. Student co-op, because I left school, didn't finished through Shaw University Cape program, and I never stopped going, entered UNCW in a master's program. But then I went to the National Association of Black Graduate Students, and they had their conference at Texas Tech, and I presented a paper and won first place. And I had a gentleman come to me and said, hey, listen, they sent me here with a checkbook. I can have any student here I want, but I want you. And they offered me a fully funded fellowship that moved me and my family from Wilmington all the way out to Minnesota. Yeah, you say that, but it was the best thing that happened at the time. We looked at everything. At the time, kids that looked like my son were disproportionately being suspended in school here. And I know because I served on the long-term hearing suspension panel. And I had to say, is this the future that I want for my kids? And so we went out to Minnesota. They funded everything. My wife was a nurse, is a nurse. And I told her, you can't work. We're going to benefit from this. You can't work. You make too much money. We're going to ride this thing out. You're laughing, but that was the only time that I ever got to earn income tax credit. But it was the best thing. It positioned my kids that when we landed in Ohio, they got in a high-performance school district, and both of them started at Ohio State. And my federal career just took off from there. I left here. I was a GS3, and their idea of keeping me here was offering me a GS4. And so when I finished graduate school, I came in at a GS9, went to an 11, became a contracting officer, got a job in Charleston as a GS13, and as a GS12. And the commander heard I was leaving, going to DC. He said, you know, Anthony, a GS13 in DC is like a GS12 here in Charleston. And I had so much respect for him that I bridled my tongue, but under my breath I was saying, sir, what makes you think I'm going to stop at a 13? And I got my 14 to come to the State Department. And I want you to know it's been the most rewarding job that I've ever had. Working out of the embassy for a whole week in Bogota, Colombia. Going to South Africa, working out of the embassy in Mexico. But what I'm telling you is these opportunities for you to take your business where I took my education are right there. All you have to do is dream big, think big. The fact that you're here means that you're a big thinker.